Hello, Brandon here. This video is mostly for myself because it does get kind of long. So it's almost Columbus Day, so I've decided that it's time to talk about my past some. Um, I just want to preface this with a trigger warning. My story is very violent. There's physical abuse, sexual abuse, psychological abuse, talk of some disturbing psychiatric facilities, abuse in jail, some things that could, trigger dysphoria. I've heard some more horrible experiences from others in the trans community, but my story is very dark. Okay, through the trigger warning. It's been 15 years since this all happened. It was Columbus Day weekend of 2005. I had been living with my boyfriend at the time in Columbus for about 2 years. I had returned to Cincinnati in August of 2005 because of a hypomanic episode. As I've mentioned in another video, I have bipolar disorder. So I'd been experiencing decreased need for sleep, agitation, paranoia, and some odd thoughts. My boyfriend was concerned when I was so out of sorts that I felt like running into traffic out of panic and being so upset that I couldn't work, so he took me back to Cincinnati to be with my family. I was doing better for the month of September, getting exercise, sleeping okay. Then in late September, I had watched Boys Don't Cry and the Brandon Tina story, which is the documentary made about Brandon Tina. That, in my opinion, is even worse than Boys Don't Cry to watch. And I remember being so angry about what happened to him and about what the media had said about him, even gay press, years later, still misgendering him. And, I stopped sleeping. I was becoming manic. My grasp on reality was becoming tenuous. I cut my hair short. I started dressing more androgynously. My boyfriend came back down from Columbus to visit me. I told him that I had plans to go downtown to the Justice Center, the Cincinnati jail, to rescue people. He was very alarmed, tried to dissuade me unsuccessfully. I started walking downtown from Mount Washington. My boyfriend and my mother started following me in their cars, but I kept walking and wouldn't go with them. So my mother called psych emergency mobile crisis services, who weren't available at the time, so they sent the Cincinnati police. I went calmly and cooperatively with the police. They supposedly took me to the University of Cincinnati Psych Emergency Services, but it's unclear to this day where they actually took me. So the male police officer walks me into wherever the hell we were, and the person at the little desk before the room, that all this shit was about to go down in, goes, "This is UC. How do you like it?" And I'm thinking, uh-oh. So they took the handcuffs off. The nurse takes the contents of my pockets, which is like $150, and she's telling me she's going to keep it. And her and the other nurse are making fun of me. There's comments about my appearance. 3 more male cops join the one standing nearby. The nurse tells me that I have to dress into scrub pants and a hospital gown. I say, well, when I was at UC Psych last year, they let me wear my own clothes up on the unit. Nurse says, well, it's different now. So I said, okay, where do I change? Nurse answers, you have to do it right here. We don't trust you. Now, I have a history of childhood sexual trauma. So do you think I was really going to get undressed in front of 4 male officers? Hell no. So I said, I'm not doing that. Nurse Ratched replies, then we'll do it for you. And all 6 of them jump me. The nurses stabbed me with syringes full of Ativan, which is the go-to for psych sedation. It's a benzodiazepine like Valium and Xanax, but what's interesting about Ativan is, for me, it has a paradoxical effect. So it actually makes me more agitated. It won't actually calm me down. Other benzos have the intended effect, but Ativan pisses me off. So the officers are ripping off my clothes. Nurses are stabbing me with syringes of sedative. And someone knocks my glasses off, which effectively blinds me. I'm still resisting, so one of the officers punches me. He punches me so hard that I lost consciousness eventually and couldn't see much out of that eye temporarily. So while this is happening, I couldn't see much because my glasses had been knocked off, but I saw something flash in front of my face, so I reached out and bit the shit out of whatever I could reach. It was Nurse Ratched's arm. I clamped down and would not let go. The cop punched me until I finally let go. I was reeling from the head trauma, fighting for consciousness. They had my pants off at this point. They managed to get me onto a table with the arm and leg restraints, got me strapped in, half naked, threw me and the table into a dark closet, laughing at me, where I blacked out. I have no idea how long I was out, but eventually an officer came in and unstrapped me, threw my pants at me and said, "You get dressed," walked me down the hall, and here's where it gets cloudy. It could have been the head trauma, but I have no memory of getting back into a cop car. I only remember going through several halls and doors and then seeing the black and white checkered floor of the Justice Center. They booked me, got my fingerprints and mugshot, and gave me a paper saying I was being charged with assault. Then they gave me a phone call and a bus token. I called my dad. They turned me loose with an arraignment date for the coming Tuesday, because Monday was Columbus Day. My dad picked me up outside the Justice Center. He took one look at the court paper and said, "Good job. Now you're in the system." I just kind of shrugged. The paperwork from the hospital was odd. A doctor I never saw said some things in the report that were completely untrue. One police incident statement referred to me as the victim, others the nurse. Dad and I got home. Mom was already asleep, I think. Our family dog, Shadow, usually slept with my dad, but that night I borrowed him. Sleep did not come easy, but it came. I probably had a concussion, but medical care was not something I wanted or was ready to accept at the time. The next day was Columbus Day. Dad and I went to La Rosa's for calzones. He asked what I intended to say when I went to court. Yeah, I just said it was going to go down the way it was going to go down. It was beyond anyone's control, and I just wanted to enjoy my food. The next day was my arraignment, and I felt guilty for biting that nurse, so I pled guilty. Even though an attorney present took one look at my face and was like, "I think you should speak to a lawyer." They immediately put me in handcuffs, throwing me very roughly against a table. A female officer took one glance at the look in my eyes and said, "She's dangerous." As bad as everything was that had happened up to that point, jail was a lot worse. I got bullied by inmates, but the COs were much worse. After an emotional visit from my parents, 2 COs dragged me back to my cell while laughing at me for crying. They put me in the psych unit, strapped me down, and injected me with more Ativan. Put me on suicide watch, even though I wasn't suicidal, because at the Hamilton County Justice Center, uh, they use suicide watch as a punishment. Um, so the Justice Center basically will torture someone into wanting to harm themselves, then put them on suicide watch, um, where they take their clothes and just give them a blanket. And in my case, they took my glasses as well. And they lock you in a cell completely alone. So they forgot to feed me for days, wouldn't give me more toilet paper. I got my period, which were always really heavy. No underwear, no pads, almost no toilet paper. They just let me bleed on myself like an animal for days. There was a window in the cell, but because they took my glasses, I couldn't see anything out of it. The COs would laugh at me, make fun of me when they even came by. After a week, they put me in the yellow suicide level 2 scrubs after letting me finally have a shower to wash the blood off. They wouldn't give me back my glasses, even for court. At court, I couldn't make out anything. The judge asked me a question. I didn't respond. She asked me if I understood what she was saying. I couldn't speak. It was as if I had forgotten how. She asked me again. I just shook my head. So she ordered a competency evaluation. The next day, 2 social workers came to see me for the competency evaluation. They were really nice, but I didn't understand much of what they were asking. I just started crying and mumbling things about wolves and the end of the world. They looked really sad and horrified. I was close enough to them to make out their faces. I failed that competency evaluation. Competency evaluations and how they do them are potentially administered in a way inconsistent with determining someone's actual mental state. For example, in 2005, like I was talking about, I failed a competency evaluation because I couldn't speak. And yes, the trauma had made my mental state deteriorate to the point that my competency for court was dubious. However, in 2014, for my last competency evaluation, right before that evaluation, I had been painting my cell with blood from a self-inflicted wound, and was asking the COs to put the puppy I had fostered 8 months prior through the little slot in the cell door where the food trays go. The COs and floor psychiatrist had mentioned my psychotic behavior to the psychologist doing the competency evaluation, but because I knew the definitions of guilty and not guilty, and knew that there were some legal charges against me, even if I didn't understand them, I passed the competency evaluation. Like, wow, great system there, folks. Anyway, back in 2005, after I failed that competency evaluation, the next day the manager of the entire jail came to see me and said that he had been talking to my dad, who had been blowing up the phones, trying to get me out. The manager of the jail said they were getting me out of there that day. They put me in handcuffs and ankle cuffs and took me to Summit Behavioral Health, which is an inpatient state psychiatric facility. I remember at Summit, when I first got there, being so happy to get a bag lunch of something edible, because everything at the Justice Center is not. Also, the summit staff were really kind to me. I don't think there was ever a kid so happy for a bag of Sun Chips as I was. I remember the intake psychiatrist asking him for Seroquel for sleep and then being taken to the lockdown all female unit. I remember my first group therapy session that first day. There was this really nice girl. They had asked the group what they thought of this hospital, and the girl said, "This isn't a hospital, it's a jail." And in so many ways, she was absolutely right. But I just thought to myself, compared to the jail I was just in, this place is paradise. And Summit was still shitty. You can't go outside. The food is not as bad as the Justice Center, but bad. I made friends with people with much more severe mental illness than my own. Women with schizophrenia who had murdered their children. Women with psychosis who were forced to do sexual things to their children by abusive husbands. I didn't judge them. They were sick, and society had thrown them away like they were garbage. There was a senior woman who had been raped by an orderly, and no one believed her. I did. Some other inmates did, but the staff, nope. Apparently, it was quite common there. People in my unit were often woken up by being hit by shoes or other objects by violent patients. Someone tried to attack me a couple of times, but people, friends bigger than me protected me. They made you participate in group activities to have privileges like keeping a CD player. An example of said activities was music group, where they hand you an instrument and talk to you like you're 5 fucking years old. Now come on, Lindsay, shake the rain stick. Not joking. Literally what it was. Patronizing would be an understatement here. See, a lot of people equate mental illness with intellectual disability, which is often a problematic take, but when it comes to me personally, it's even more egregious. I am very, very smart, and chronically underestimated in that respect. To give you an idea, for those who know much about psychology, there is a test called the MMPI-2, the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. It's not typically used to obtain diagnostic codes, but it can be used to determine certain personality traits that indicate different mental illnesses. It's supposed to be very hard to fool. During my first psychiatric inpatient experience when I was 19, the 72-hour hold, I fooled that test. And then talked my way out of a longer hospitalization. And I was still very, very manic. So, and the thing is, too, I'm autistic, and, and autistic people, there are times for me and other autistic people that we just don't communicate in the same ways that, people are familiar with. It doesn't mean we're not highly intelligent. It just means we lack ways to communicate that sometimes. Also, if I'm not comfortable, I'm very quiet and reticent. I prefer to listen a lot of times. If I don't feel I can add much to the conversation or improve upon the silence in some way, I don't speak. So anyway, being talked down to about the rain stick, always, that sort of thing is always obnoxious to me. But in this scenario, where I'm forced to interact in such a way in order to receive the bare minimum I need for self-care. Awful. So I'm at Summit for 6 weeks on Restore to Competency. They originally said they'd let me out before Thanksgiving, which I was really looking forward to seeing my family. The doctor changes his mind, even though the mania has dissipated at this point with time and sleep. I cry in a meeting with the doctor and my mother because they want to keep me longer. So, because I cried, they put me on a mood stabilizer with horrible side effects. Seems reasonable, right? The 6 weeks has passed. I'm found competent to return to court. I'm in mental health court, which in 2005 is a new divergence program designed to keep the mentally ill out of jail. The judge sees that I've been locked up for over 8 weeks and lets me out on an OR, or own reconnaissance bond. When I return to court, the victim impact statement from the nurse says she wants me in jail as long as possible, and she wants it so that I can legally never come back to UC Psych. Nice to know a psych nurse has so much compassion, isn't it? Also, there's no cognizance of the fact that she helped create that situation. Whatever. I get a year of probation in mental health court, so I have to report to the court every month. At least once a month, I have to report to the probation officer, who is actually really cool. I had to be on court mandated medication that I had no say in. It was Abilify, which made me gain weight and gave me a facial tic called tardive dyskinesia. That took years to go away, even once I discontinued the medication. My favorite part of that was the clock, doctor's clipboard, all the pens and other items in his office were branded with the Abilify logo. But I'm sure that had nothing to do with why I was prescribed that drug, right? The best thing to come out of the whole mental health court situation, though, was that my probation officer wanted me to attend bipolar support groups. I went to several, even helped facilitate some. It was honestly the most helpful aspect of treatment, and it helped me later when trying to learn to moderate transgender support groups. So what happened to the cops who beat the shit out of me? Well, they all kept changing their story, and the camera footage went missing. We had originally wanted to sue, but my family couldn't afford a lawyer, so nothing ever came of it. And honestly, I didn't even want to push the issue because I didn't want to relive the experience. So they got away with it. The injustice for myself wasn't the biggest issue. As someone said much later about me, I'm tough. I can take it. But it haunted me. What if they do it to someone else? Always haunted me. As for the long-term effects on me, I fell into a depression in 2007 after moving back to Columbus. At one point, I wouldn't leave my house without my boyfriend. I got up to 250 pounds and was binge eating. I slept 16 hours a day and couldn't work. I didn't know I had PTSD until reading a friend's blog in 2012 where he talked about having PTSD and being agoraphobic due to violence. And I'm like, oh my God, that's me. I didn't have the language to communicate what I'd gone through. I just knew I was a different person after that. I had trouble trusting anyone. I was fearful. I looked at the ground when I walked, and I desperately wished people wouldn't talk to me. Just leave me be. And I never talked about it. And I don't think after getting out of Summit that I ever even cried about it. But I never realized how angry I was about everything that had happened to me. And the incident essentially scared me back into the closet for about 5 years. It was the hope of being able to eventually transition that gave me the strength to lose 115 pounds in the 6 year unhealthy relationship with my boyfriend. Although I'd like to say he's a really good guy, we were just totally wrong for each other. And I came back to Cincinnati in 2009. I got a job at a local pet resort and soon after became a supervisor. And with the help of my best friend and boss, I was able to transition. I was trying to figure out a new name for myself, but nothing fit. I tried Jacob, Jake for short, didn't seem right. In true Transguy fashion, I tried an Irish name, Kieran. Also, didn't work. One day I was at work with my boss, outside with the dogs. Gorgeous day. I told her very briefly a bit about the violence I had endured in 2005 and how there were similarities of my story to Brandon Tina's. The abusive cops, the violence, the sexual assault. I asked her if the name Brandon fit me. She said it sounded perfect. I've been Brandon ever since. Someone I loved and respected when I came to the trans community told a mutual friend of ours, of me, that kid has baggage. I was so upset when I found that out. Indignant, incredulous. I thought to myself, how dare you? You don't even know what happened to me, what I've been through. But how could he have known? And also, he had a point. It got me thinking, am I so damaged by the things I've been through that it's affecting my ability to form healthy relationships and to help my community? The answer was yes. To quote Rebel Without a Cause, I'd had my head in a sling for years. I was surviving, but that's it. So maybe that's why jail in 2014 wasn't the worst place for me. I think I had to face my past to heal from it. I'd been pushing it away, pushing it down. I didn't have nightmares anymore, but one day at the pet resort, I saw a TV show in the break room during lunch called Cell Block 6 about the women's jail in Hamilton County Justice Center. They showed a shot of the white and black checkered floor, and I ran into the bathroom and had a panic attack. I was not okay for the rest of the week. And whenever Columbus Day rolled around, I was in a terrible mood. When I turned myself in 2014, the first thing I saw at the Justice Center upon my booking was a screen with my 2005 mugshot on it. It was worse looking than in memory. Half my face was black and blue. So yeah, I was facing my past. In a lot of ways, I've made peace with it now. I don't live there anymore. I had desperately wanted a relationship with the person I kept bothering, harassing, terrifying. But I don't know that I could have been a good partner to him with all that unresolved shit, Now he's moved on. I'm still in Cincinnati, trying to help those I can find community. And I have no time for dating. And I think I have more work to do on myself. And I've got a great therapist, and we're working, out some things. And I've had other therapists and we've worked through the trauma. But, even if it wasn't that I don't have time for dating or that I think I have improvements to do on myself, there's COVID. And I pretty much go nowhere but work, my mom's, and occasionally I run errands for a friend who can't drive. I know some people are still hooking up and going on dates. But even if I wasn't demisexual, I wouldn't right now. And I don't know what the future holds. I'll continue to focus on school, the trans group I organize for, and the greater Cincinnati trans community. TDOR, the Trans Day of Remembrance, is otherwise known as one of the worst holidays ever, is coming up. I consider myself a survivor of transphobic violence. So the day has always made me very reflective. Although I am grateful to still be alive. Many every year are not so lucky, particularly trans women of color. This year, due to COVID, Cincinnati's TDOR will be on Zoom, Facebook Live, and archived to YouTube. We're still looking for speakers for the event. It'll be hard to listen to these stories, as always, but important. Although I honestly think it's cis people who need to hear these stories the most, not just us re-traumatizing each other. But hey, what do I know? So that's my backstory. What happened to me long before I came to the Cincinnati trans community. And one reason that I keep fighting, even though I still struggle with mental health challenges, and now the legal history that impacts my ability to get jobs and housing. I want better for our people. I want justice. I want support. I want fellowship and community. I'm nervous for the election coming up next month. We may need each other more than ever. And if things get darker, I still have hope for the future. I've seen a strength among our people that gives me hope and courage. There was a time back before all this happened to me that I was, in action, basically fearless. I'm back to that place again. I am not afraid. We need to help each other and love each other. We're going to get through this. We're going to overcome. There's a revolution coming. We need to be prepared for it. I'm all in. Anyways, thanks for listening. Bye.